Okay, hello, good morning, everybody. All right, once again, we thank the attendees and the panelists for being here today on our webinar. We'll start. Um, but before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Paula from the Cordillera Study Center, and I will be the moderator for this webinar, which we are happy to post. Um, Let me just give a run through of the program that we will have today. So first, we will have our opening remarks to be given by Director Ruth Tindaan of the Cordillera Study Center. We'll introduce our first speaker, Professor Lizelle Magtoto, and then she'll have her presentation. And then I'll introduce the second speaker, Professor Jennifer Joseph of the College of Social Sciences. And then she will give her presentation. After that, we'll have a Q&A portion for both of our speakers today. We will be opening the Q&A box for your questions, comments, and we are also streaming live on YouTube, so we will also be reading comments from there. So please, if you would like to have to ask questions, please take note of them, and then we will entertain them later after our speakers have given their presentations. And then after that, we will be closing. Right. So without further ado, I turn over the screen to Professor Ruth Tindaan, Director of the Cordillera Study Center, University of the Philippines.
Good morning to all our participants this morning. Welcome to you and thank you for joining us in this event. This lecture is part of CSC's Completed Research Lecture Series, which is organized to disseminate research completed by UP Baguio faculty and reps whose projects were funded by the Cordillera Studies Center through its research grants. With this lecture series, we hope that we are able to inform the UP Baguio community and the public in general about the results of these funded researches. And we also hope that with these lectures, UP Baguio researchers and researchers from other agencies or universities will have a chance to interact and perhaps also find some points for collaboration. And as Paula said earlier, we're going to have two lectures this morning, and we're grateful to Professor Lizelle Magtoto of the College of Science and Professor Jennifer Joseph of the College of Social Sciences for accepting our invitation to present their recently concluded work for this morning's program. And we will entertain your questions, queries about the works of these two presenters later on. So I hope you will have some queries and um, anything that you'd like to ask them in relation to their project. So thank you for joining us again. Welcome, and hope it's going to be a productive morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mama Ruth. Okay. All right. So I will introduce our first speaker for today. Our first speaker is Professor Lizelle R. Molina Magtoto of the Department of Biology, College of Science, University of the Philippines, Baguio, where she is an assistant professor of biology. She is currently undertaking her Doctor of Philosophy in Botany from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Laguna, where her dissertation is on the cladistics of Artesia in Greater Luzon Island, Philippines. Her recent publications include Species of Philippine Artesia, which was published in the Journal on New Biological Reports, and Begonia adamsensis, a new species from Luzon Island, the Philippines, published in Phytotaxa. Her presentation today is an output of her research involvement funded by the Cordillera Study Center UP Baguio on the ecological assessment of decommissioned mine tailings facilities in Tuba, Benguet. So without further ado again, I turn over to Professor Magtoto.
Thank you, Ma'am Paula. Thank you, Ma'am Ruth. So good morning, everyone. I will be presenting to you the output of our team with the project Ecological Assessment of Decommissioned Mine Tailings Facilities in Tuba Benguet, Cordillera, Philippines. So together with me in this team is Professor Bagangao, Majay Bagangao, also Professor Rosemary Gutierrez, Dean Dimfna Javier, Mr. January Pagaduan, and Mr. Maverick and Tamayo. So today I will be presenting the pioneer communities that were identified in decommissioned mine tailings facilities in Tuba Benguet. So, I'm sorry, just to give you a brief background of why we did this study. Philippines, as we know, is one of the mineralized countries, mineralized countries in the world. It is fifth in rank, based on the abundance of minerals such as copper, gold, and nickel. And actually, in 2017, it contributed gross production value of 10.7 billion Philippine peso. So that was coming from 50 mining companies actively operating in the country in 2017. So what is with these mining activities? As we all know, in the mining process would end, the mine waste will end to tailing facilities. So in the initial process, grinding, flotation, the waste products are deposited or dumped in tailings facilities. And further purification of the products, again, waste are deposited in the tailings facilities. So this waste, mine waste, are somehow stored for a long period within those tailing sites. And if not managed well, then this may pose threat to human beings. So disposal sites, mine waste disposal sites, may remain barren for decades if these are decommissioned. When we say decommissioned, the storage facility might have reached its full capacity. Thus, they have to leave it and take another operating sites or functional dump sites. So these areas are not left open. Instead, these are managed. That's why they are called decommissioned tailings facilities. Whereas other mine tailings are left open, especially for open pit mining. So there are no individuals managing this mine tailings. Thus, it causes threats to human beings and other organisms surrounding it. So these mine tailings are actually high in heavy metal concentrations. So these heavy metals may pose negative effect on human health as well as environmental health. When we say threat to environmental health, of course, this may cause toxicity, high toxicity to other organisms. And also some of the dusts may be carried by wind or by precipitates, by groundwater to other communities, hence affecting other communities surrounding these mine tailing areas. So in this study, we aimed to identify the pioneer communities that are present in decommissioned mine tailings. Why are we interested in this? Specifically, there are, for decommissioned mine tailings in Tuba Benguet, we've seen some vegetations. And we believe that these vegetations are somehow associated with other organisms, such as bacteria, that may contribute to their growth and development. And also, before this mine tailings are occupied by vegetation, they're first occupied by aquatic organisms such as plankton. Thus, we also investigated the pioneer communities of plankton. Now, identifying these pioneer communities may help the local agencies to somehow come up with a scientific-based or a science-based rehabilitation and restoration project or plans for disturbed areas similar to this decommissioned mine tailings facilities. So in Benguet, we are very aware that there are several open pit mining activities happening, and therefore mine tailings are found unmanaged. So for local government, for the local government units, they might use this baseline data on what pioneer communities may be, may help them they may help them recover, revegetate, or restore these disturbed areas. So our study site is within one of the mining companies in Tuba Benguet. So specifically, we conducted our sampling at tailings facility of tailing facility 2 and tailing facility 3 of this mining company. So tailing storage facility 2, this one, is already undergoing some succession, where pioneer communities of grasses and other plants are observed visually. So makikita, if you will pass by this area, you would easily identify some grasses living, starting to grow abundantly in this decommissioned tailings facility. And we also conducted bacterial sampling in this site, as we know that there are some symbionts associated to those plants that are growing in this this area with heavy metal concentration. Also, the tailings storage facility 3 was investigated for the presence of plankton. And we also checked bacterial composition of the sediment going to the tailings pond. So this is where we got some of the sediments. And this is where we got samples for plankton analysis. So we also investigated the quality of the water here in the tailings pond before it flows out, going down to one of the major rivers in Tuba. So for the tailings storage facility 2, which is already decommissioned for almost 20 years. So it was functional from 1981 to 1990. So it has been almost 30 years na decommissioned. So as observed from this image, it is already undergoing its early secondary succession. And when we say secondary ecological succession, these are the revegetation or the occupation of organisms in a previously disturbed area. So we checked the heavy metal composition of the soil and found that there is 8.69 milligram per kilogram of copper, 0.05 milligram per kilogram of lead, and 2.62 milligram per kilogram of zinc. So in this area, we also got soil samples for bacterial analysis, and there were nitrogen fixing bacteria and putative methanophores or methanogen loving bacteria that are found in the area. So these are actually contributors to nitrogen fixation for the plant, and also for degradation of other organic matters and other elements contributed by these methanotrophs. So the metallophytes, or the metal-loving plants that were identified dominantly living in the area, were Saccharum spontaneum and Onychium siliculosum. So this one is a grass species, whereas this is a fern species. So from this image, from this image, there is this population of the fern, and this is the spontaneum, Saccharum spontaneum. So they were the most dominant species found in this tailings facility. So for the metallophytes, or the metal-loving plants, we computed for the bioaccumulation factor and the translocation factor for us to identify if these are potential hyperaccumulator of metals, or they can be candidates for phytostabilization and phytoremediation. So if the total element concentration in the plant root over total element concentration in soil is greater than 1, then it serves as a hyperaccumulator. So ibig sabihin, or that means there are elements that are stored in its roots but are not, or there are a lot of elements that are taken up by this plant from soil and stored in its tissues, in its body organs. However, for the translocation factor, we've found that if these elements are mostly stored in its roots compared to its shoots, ibig sabihin, they were not translocated to the shoots, then they are good candidates for phytostabilization. So for phytostabilization, we can have these plants planted in this kind of substrate without harming or grazing animals that may visit the area. That is because the heavy metals are not translocated in the shoots. They are stored primarily in the roots. So they can be used for phytoremediation as well, since you can extract these elements from the roots. So they are not harmful to grazing animals. These plants are not harmful to grazing animals because the elements are not translocated in their shoots. So if this is a characteristic of the organisms found in the area, then they are good for phytostabilization and phytoremediation. So for Saccharum spontaneum, this is commonly known as talahib. So the bioaccumulation factor was greater than 1 for both copper and zinc, which means it can accumulate, or it can uptake a good amount of copper and zinc from the soil to its tissues. At the same time, it has a translocation factor less than 1. Hence, it is a good candidate for phytostabilization, meaning most of the metal elements are not translocated. They stayed in the roots and not translocated in the shoots. So the individual values of the metals that were investigated or analyzed are the following. So copper, there were 11 milligrams per kilogram of soil in the shoot, and zinc 15 milligrams per kilogram. And in the roots, a lot of copper was found, and also almost similar amount of zinc was detected. Now, there was no lead detected in the shoot nor in roots of this grass, probably because of the sensitivity of the assay that was used. So probably the detection limit of the assay was a little higher compared to the amount that was present in the soil. So it was not detected. And For the Onychium siliculosum, this is a fern. So this little fern here, also known as pakong anwang. So it has a bioaccumulation factor greater than 1 also for both for all the elements tested, lead, copper, and zinc. So it's a hyperaccumulator for these 3 metals, and also has a translocation factor less than 1 for each of these heavy metals. So it's also a good candidate for phytostabilization, similar to saccharum, saccharum spontaneum. Now, the good thing for introducing ferns such as Onychium siliculosum in decommissioned mine tailing sites or barren mine tailing sites is that they have the ability to condition also the soil. They are not only hyperaccumulators, but they also have the ability to convert some of the elements of the soil found in the soil that may in turn become available for other surrounding plants. So the nitrogen fixing bacteria that were found in the soil are actually the following. So this is the molecular phylogenetic tree derived from the analysis of the 16S ribosomal DNA of the bacterial samples. So these are the nitrogen fixing bacteria, 1, 2, 3. And nitrogen fixers are actually early colonizers for nitrogen deficient habitats, because even if there are nitrogen compounds that are available in the soil, if these are not converted to its available form for other plants to consume, then it would be useless. Nitrogen is very important for the growth of plants, for their cell division, for the cell growth, for their photosynthesis. Hence, it is really important to have nitrogen fixers in the surroundings in this type of substrate. So this nitrogen fixing bacteria then serve as a major source of nitrogen for these metallophytes, the saccharum, the spontaneum saccharum, and Onychium siliculosum. So the agrobacterium, for instance, forms galls in roots and crowns and stems, so they are somehow closely associated with the plant tissues. Brevundimonas olei is a potential growth promoter in the root zones of of the soil. And Stenotrophomonas rhizophylla is known as a plant protector. It protects them from pathogens, and it also has a big role in nitrogen and sulfur cycling. The methanotrophs or methanogen-loving bacteria, they actually make available. They participate in carbon cycling, that is by degrading methane derived from anoxic decomposition back to cell material and carbon dioxide. So they have this methane monooxygenase gene, or MMOG, I should say, to degrade or co-oxidize heavy metals and other organic pollutants. Pseudomonas, however, or mostly of these methanotrophs identified, the blue ones, are actually opportunistic pathogens. So they are not characteristically methanotrophs, methanogen-loving bacteria, but most probably they were able to acquire some part of the plastid that is capable of degrading methane, thus were clustered among the methanogens here, or the methanotrophs here. Also, Pseudomonas can catabolize xenobiotics such as pesticides and other toxic compounds. Now, for the sediment analysis in TSF3, going to TSF3 or Tailings Storage Facility 3. So sediments were analyzed. That is because these are potential carriers and sources of metal contaminants in aquatic systems. Given their structure, metals can they have a high surface they have high surface structure. Therefore, metals can have greater surface area where they can touch. So sediments are then the largest contaminants of surface water by weight and volume. And the metals that were detected in ppm for composite samples of sediments, when we say composite, so there were 3 sampling sites within the stretch of TSF3, but were all combined in one sample for the analysis. So there were 0.13 ppm of lead, 3.83 ppm of copper, 5.91 ppm of zinc. And these values are below the sediment guideline value of 50 for lead, 65 for copper, and 200 for zinc, which means that compared to other mine tailings storage facilities, relatively, this does not pose toxic effect on organisms. Now, for the bacterial analysis coming from the sediments, metallophilic bacteria were identified, but there were 9 of them: Bacillus albus, Lysinium bacillus baetica, Bacillus boronitolerans, Bacillus paramicoides. This bacteria were isolated from media that was enhanced with cobalt. And the following bacteria were isolated from media enhanced with zinc: Pseudomonas baetica, Pseudomonas corensis, and Delphtia churuhatensis. And also with copper-induced medium, these bacteria were isolated: Bacillus cereus, Acrobacter dilei, and Pseudomonas protegens. So these bacteria were identified again from DNA sequencing that was done and through analysis for molecular phylogeny. Now, the metallophilic bacteria were all degraders of harmful compounds. All bacteria isolates were considered highly tolerant with increased heavy metal concentration, as they were grown in a culture medium with 10 molar concentration of cobalt, copper, and zinc. And this concentration are higher, in fact, compared to the detected amount of metals from the sediments in the area. So, which means that they can tolerate even higher amount of copper or zinc that may be found in the area. Now, for the water quality of tailings pond down the tailings, the mine tailings, there is this body of water. So we have the tailings pond before it flows out from the tailings facility going to the river. So we also checked or analyzed some parameters or quality of the water, temperature, for example. So with an average of 26.63 Celsius, the pH was a little high, 8.78. Dissolved oxygen is 14.03. Total dissolved solids in ppm is 529, and luminance is 882. Now, the high pH or alkalinity is probably due to lime treatment, which is done for which done before it's um, stored in this pond. So they treat the water with lime. According to one of our team members, who is a geologist, they really have this is one of the treatments that they do in mining facilities for to increase alkalinity of the water and for it to be more suitable for growth of aquatic organisms. So with these characteristics, especially on its pH, this body of water falls into class C water. That's according to the effluent standards of DNR. And when we say class C, somehow this is safe, or this does not pose harm to organisms, which means you can grow fish or other aquatic organisms in this body of water. Actually, in fact, one of the personnels I mentioned that they're actually catching some tilapia in this tailings pond. And for the metal analysis of the water, so there were nitrate detected, but nitrate, phosphate, copper, and lead, but are below the DNR effluent standard, which means that this low heavy metal concentration may be attributed to the proper treatment done by the company. And also, the high pH, the alkalinity of the water immobilizes the heavy metals. So mobilization of these heavy metals usually decreases with high pH. And this is somehow supported by the previous analysis for sediments, where there are higher concentration of metals found in sediments than in this body of water. So, which means they were they were immobilized and attached to the sediment particles. And for the plankton community, there were 16 identified 16 genera of phytoplankton and 2 genera of zooplankton. So these plankton communities contribute to more diverse, bigger aquatic organisms as they serve as food also to bigger organisms. So in the food chain, parang sila yung nasa base. So they are eaten by bigger aquatic organisms and then in turn eaten by another bigger organism. So the presence of these plankton communities then support the assumption that this body of water is safe, being a class C water, so it's safe as suggested by the presence or occurrence of this plankton. So Lichmophora, Navicula, Hyalodiscus, Acanthes, and more. So these are the plankton species that were observed. Now, for to summarize this presentation, so pioneer communities are observed in this decommissioned mine tailings facilities. There were 2 plant pioneer species identified, Saccharum spontaneum and a fern, Onychium siliculosum, which are both hyperaccumulators, meaning they can absorb or they can take up much amount of water from the soil. And since they're both native to the Philippines, they are good candidates for phytoremediation and phytostabilization projects within the locality. The presence of nitrogen fixers in the decommissioned storage facility, mine tailings storage facility, also assures the capability of nitrogen fixation of the soil and rhizosphere of plants, making this nitrogen more available to support the growing population of vegetations. And also, given that there are specific nitrogen fixers that can tolerate such condition of the soil, they can be explored and promoted as plant growth promoters also for disturbed areas similar to this mine tailings. The presence of methanogens and metallophilic bacteria contribute to plant protection and biochemical cycling of important chemical elements. Hence, they are also important for pioneer communities, for the establishment of pioneer communities. Because if these are not present in the area, then the establishing plant communities may be exposed to other pathogens. Hence, it's possible that they will not be able to proliferate or increase in number. Minimal concentration of heavy metals in water samples suggests reduced mobilization of heavy metals due to the alkalinity of the water. Hence, concentrations of heavy metals are higher in sediments compared to this water. And having glass seawater and the observation of plankton in the area are indicative of good water treatment being done in these facilities. And lastly, occurrence of pioneer species such as plankton, metallophytes, nitrogen fixers, metallophilic bacteria, and methanotrophs is suggestive of early recovery or succession, and that organic matter is building up in the community because there are carbon cycling, sulfur cycling, and nitrogen cycling that's happening. And these are all contributory to the development of plant tissues and plant population as a whole. So with that, I would like to acknowledge the support of the following. Of course, the Cordillera Study Center of UP Baguio for the ITRG grant provided to the team, and the support of these students for especially in the reconnaissance and sampling trips. So with me in the team are Professor Gutierrez, Mr. Pagaduan, and Professor Bagangao here. And also the staff and personnel of the mining company for providing us access and assistance during the field work. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Magtoto, for that. So we already have a couple of questions in the Q&A box, but we will be answering them later on after the second presentation. So, kumusta po? Okay pa ba tayo, mga attendees? Pwede ba, can you give me a thumbs up kung okay pa tayo? Pwede ba sila? Are they allowed to, Yeah? Okay pa? Sige. All right. So, moving on. Okay, so moving on, I will be introducing our second speaker before her presentation. So our second speaker is Professor Jennifer Curry Joseph of the Department of Social Anthropology and Psychology of the College of Social Sciences, University of the Philippines, Baguio. Her recent publications include vernacular self-representation in Filipino gender identities, the Bontoc Minamagkit published in Southeast Asia Research. Also, Pinoy Tomboys, Lesbians and Transgenders, Their Gender, and Sexual Identities and Activism since the 1980s, published in More Tomboy, More Bakla Than We Admit, Insights into Sexual and Gender Diversity in Philippine Culture, History, and Politics. Her recent research includes sexual and reproductive health practices of men having sex with men or boys in Baguio City and La Trinidad, Benguet. So without further ado, I'm turning over the screen to Professor Joseph. So magandang umaga po.
Hi, good morning. Magandang umaga, Pao, Ruth, at sa lahat kay Professor Magtoto.
Okay. So tingnan po natin, are you able to share your
No, I've sent my PowerPoint. So who's sharing? Is it Dr. Tindaan?
Okay, so tingnan po natin.
So while we're waiting for Dr. Tindaan, magpa-plug na rin ako, shameless. Nabanggit mo yung libro. Tomorrow, Vival Foundation will be launching the book, More Tomboy and More Bakla. It's going to be a virtual launch starting 9 to 10 in the morning tomorrow. So may mga announcements po yan sa social media. Okay, should I start?
Okay po.
Okay, this research was funded by the Cordillera Study Center, if I'm not mistaken, 2 years ago. So the title of my presentation is Non-Prescribed Cross-Sex Hormone Therapy among transgender persons in Baguio City and La Trinidad, Benguet. Next slide. Okay, I would like to start with acknowledgement para hindi na magkalimutan mamaya. So thank you, my gratitude to the Cordillera Study Center, the director and staff, the resource persons who agreed to be part of this research, friends and acquaintances, both virtual and actual, who assisted in locating the resource persons, Jimbo Fatalia, our able research assistant, for his assistance in making this presentation more coherent. Next slide po. Okay, the objectives of the research include the following. I wanted to investigate the non-prescribed hormone therapy. When I say non-prescribed hormone therapy, ibig sabihin nun, it means that transgender persons or individuals are taking hormone therapy, are engaging in hormone therapy on their own. It's not prescribed by a medical practitioner, kumbaga self-medication. They are self-medicating. Using contraceptive pills or synthetic hormones. Okay, so I wanted to find out what are their sources of information regarding sex hormone therapy, what are their, where do they get their supply, and their methods of procurement. Next slide. What are the types of medication and the dosage of these sex hormone drugs and pills taken by the transgenders? What are their self-reported side effects and how do they manage these side effects? What are the possible health risks posed by non-prescribed cross-sex hormone therapy? Because there are a lot of risks, serious health risks. Next slide. Okay, how do they interact with or their relationships with of the transitioning transgender persons with medical practitioners? Why do they have to resort to non-prescribed hormone therapy or self-medication? And another major objective of the research is to generate recommendations to address issues associated with non-prescribed cross-sex hormone therapy. Okay. Methods. Since the pandemic, I tried to incorporate other methods. Okay, basically, I still rely on key informant interviews, both face-to-face and using electronic communication platforms like social media in my data gathering. And I am revisiting and trying to polish my explorations in the new kinds of methodology called nethnography. So using the internet in coming up with ethnographies and revisiting bibliographic narratives. Okay. I use the snowball technique in locating and accessing my key informants. So I had 6 trans women and 2 trans men. Mas mahirap mag-access ng trans men and they are more rare compared to the trans women. Okay, next. Okay, what is the overarching theoretical and conceptual framework? The UNFPA defines sexual and reproductive health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being in all matters relating to the reproductive system. So I'm adopting that UNFPA SRH definition. When you have accurate information and accessible services, you empower your individuals, especially your minoritized and discriminated categories of people, to make decisions, informed decisions regarding their own sexual and reproductive health. Next slide. Okay, these are some of the findings. Okay, what are the reasons for cross-sex hormone therapy? I should qualify this, non-prescribed cross-sex hormone therapy. When you say, why do people engage in cross-sex hormone therapy? Because definition of terms. Sex is your assigned sex at birth, usually based on your primary and secondary sex characteristics, hormones, cells, genitalia, sexual genitalia. Now, when your assigned sex at birth does not coincide, or there's a discrepancy between your sex assigned at birth and your gender identity, which is your identification as male or female. Okay, it may not be consistent with your sex assigned at birth. Then some would want to, and some are transitioning. So they would want to become, let's say, if you're biologically male, your sex assigned at birth is male, you can become female through transition. And then some of them are called trans women, or some would just refer to themselves as women. Okay, and it also for the other sector, yung female to male, transgender. So the umbrella term there is transgender. Okay, so why do they engage in non-prescribed cross-sex hormone therapy? For example, the biological males take contraceptive pills to make themselves more feminine. For example, making their buttocks and breast more round or fuller, force their skin to become finer, and to greatly decrease the growth of body and facial hair. So basically, you add female hormones and you block the male hormones para mas maging babae ang itsura, para it's more consistent with your identity. Okay, next slide. Okay, in the 1980s, cross-sex hormone therapy was already prevalent in Baguio City and La Trinidad. This was practiced by the many parloristas in the many beauty parlors in Baguio and La Trinidad. Ang dami-dami, di ba? If you're from Baguio, alam mong bawat malaki ang matindi ang density, population density ng beauty parlors in Baguio. Okay. So these baklang parloristas, or the gays and the bakla parloristas, would exchange information on contraceptive pills, where to get them, where's the cheapest place to get them, and they would take these contraceptive pills. For the overseas, if you recall, we are a major sending country of entertainers to Japan, and many of them were bakla or gay or transgenders, and they went to Japan, and there's a space for transgender entertainers in Japan. So it was so lucrative, so it was so rampant, transitioning in Japan, in the entertainment centers in Japan, was so rampant that it was so lucrative that a Filipino doctor, reportedly a Filipino doctor, could go to Japan on a tourist visa and administer injectables and then come home to the Philippines. So magraraket siya sa Japan. Of course, this is clandestine. Magraraket siya sa Japan, Filipino doctor, mag-i-inject ng sex hormones sa mga Filipino transgenders, tapos magsha-shopping na siya, tapos uwi siya ng Pilipinas. And that was done on a regular basis. Every few months, the doctor goes to Japan. Ganun siya ka-lucrative and ganun siya ka-prevalent. Okay, next slide. Okay, now we go 80s and 1990s. Going back to the practice of the parloristas or the gays in the parlors, they would take the common female contraceptive pills. Okay, and they would take 30 to 50 pills in a week. Usually, the normal dosage is 30 pills, 0.10 milligrams per month. Okay, usually for a female who doesn't want to get pregnant. So 0.10 milligrams per month. Pero these bakla parloristas used to take 30 to 50 pills per week, not month, not in a month, per week. Okay. Eventually, in the 1990s, this practice waned because of the perceived or the felt side effects. For example, they had very decreased or non-existent libido. So they could not, wala silang sexual drive. So nagrereklamo ang mga boyfriends na wala ng sex life. And then some of them developed symptoms for coronary heart disease. So they stopped. O kaya ngayon ang mga ano nila is hyperacidity, severe hyperacidity. Okay, next slide please. Okay, in Metro Manila, this, of course, it became more rampant, more prevalent in Metro Manila with the emergence of ideologies and practices associated with transgender individuals and the emergence of associations of transgender persons. So nagkaroon ng network, so nandiyan na rin yung ideologies coming from the West, and therefore it became more prevalent. Next slide. Okay, in Baguio and La Trinidad, in the 1990s and continuing until the present, there is this perceived openness of certain economic sectors and professions to non-heteronormative gender and sexual identities. With the rise of the BPOs in Baguio City and La Trinidad, they became more open to non-heteronormative identities. So, nagkaroon ng space ang bakla, ang mga tomboy, ang mga gays, ang mga trans women sa BPOs. Also sa academe. Nagbukas na rin ang academe. There were, even in UP in the 1990s, there were a few, but they still felt discriminated and ridiculed, even in UP. But in the 2000s, things changed. Maybe because of social media, maybe because of the internet, but we felt that things really changed. So law enforcement agencies, so yung mga security guards, police, criminology, so they became more open to transgenders enrolling in these occupations and courses. Okay, next slide. Okay, with increased income, more opportunities, pwede na sa academe, be it academic or non-teaching staff in the different universities and colleges in Baguio, and the other opportunities of BPOs. With increased income, also increased capacity to engage in cross-sex hormone therapy. So may disposable income that you can spend on hormone therapy. Okay, next. Okay, what are the contributing factors why there is this phenomenon of non-prescribed hormone therapy? One, there's an absence of sensitive, accessible, and appropriate health infrastructure for transgender persons. Walang available or hardly any. On the other hand, there's this easily available information and communication technology at their disposal. So they can research on hormone therapy and just Dr. Google. So, number 3, easy access without prescription, over-the-counter purchase in drugstores, a proliferation of e-commerce and delivery apps, especially during this pandemic. Mas tumaas ang trade, ang commerce in hormone drugs, hormone therapy, cross-sex hormone injectables during the pandemic. Okay. My difference, I always say that in my researches, I also employ the concept of intersectionality. There are different dimensions to our identity. We are members of a socioeconomic class, a certain gender, religion, age group, etc. And all these factor in our life situations and our decisions in addressing our life situations. So the gays and the bakla from the beauty parlor and those in the informal sector, the tinderas, the tinderos, yung mga sidewalk vendors from the lower socioeconomic strata, their source of information on sex hormone is usually their peer groups, such as friends and acquaintances who have had positive experience with hormone therapy. Lately na lang yan sa Facebook, yung marketplace sa Facebook. Sige, next slide. Sa BPO sector, workers and from lower middle and middle socioeconomic class, it's more from the websites, social media apps, itong mga e-commerce sites. That's where they get their information on cross-sex hormone therapy. The danger there is that sabi nga sa internet, di ba, ang dami-daming fake news and they're just trying to sell products. So you are not sure whether what you're seeing could help you. Baka instead, di ba, baka nga it's more harmful if you take these drugs that don't know where they are sourced, where they are made, and they're just delivered to you. You don't know. It might be more harmful. Next slide. Okay, ito yung over-the-counter purchases in drugstores. For the newbie or the neophyte transitioning transgender, they go to the drugstores in Baguio and La Trinidad to buy contraceptive pills. The most popular brand is Micropill. This is the go-to drug of neophytes. Okay, pinakamura siya. Next slide. Okay. Those with higher incomes and better employed, better paying jobs, from Micropill, they go to the more expensive brands. Let's say they can shift to more expensive brands of oral contraceptives or yung hormone therapy na injectables. So 900 pesos when you buy sa over-the-counter. No questions asked, no prescription needed. They consume this in less than 2 weeks. Okay, is what they do. 3 tablets a day or 30 milligrams per day. Per day, ha? So kung 0.10 milligrams per day yung prescribed or the usual dosage, 0.30 is what they take. Okay, next slide. Okay. 2010s became more prevalent, easily accessible injectables in La Trinidad and Baguio City. The users are usually in their 20s, working either in the beauty parlors or in the various BPOs in the region, and students. Most of them are college students or ngayon siguro junior high, senior high. Okay, next. This is the cost. Over-the-counter, injectables to, ha? Hormones to. Yung 2-week supply, if you buy it from the local drugstores, it's 2,200 to 2,300. If you buy online, it costs 1,500. So, ang laking difference nun, yung 700 to 800 pesos. Of course, those who are transitioning would prefer to buy from online shops. Of course, siguro if we're talking of, if there's such a thing as safer, non-prescribed, I would not want to label safe ang non-prescribed hormone therapy. Of course, they would, at least there's a drugstore. There's a physical store that you can go back to if there's something wrong with what you purchased. In online shops, where do you file a complaint? Where do you just, diba, if you're just returning a simple gadget or accessory you bought online, you always find out that it's more expensive to send back the item than just ignoring it, and even if it's a defective item. So what more with this very crucial hormone injectables? So most of them buy online. If you are now well connected and you have established a network, they have a network, they talk to each other and they know where to purchase good quality, in quotes, good quality or at least reliable, hindi siya reliable, good quality, not fake, not counterfeit hormone injectables, synthetic hormone injectables. So they parang siyang chismis brigade. Oh, may supply si ganito. And usually their suppliers are also Filipinos from abroad. Doon sila nag-order. They order from Filipinos based in abroad who send them the materials, the product. Okay, next slide. Okay. Just to give you an idea, a typical regimen of a neophyte transitioning transgender. So just like I mentioned earlier, usually college student, first year or siguro senior year, junior high, senior high ngayon. They take an average of 3 to 4 tablets of oral contraceptives. And for my resource persons, they take it for a year or 4 years. The longest is 4 years, but she already felt side effects after a month of taking the pills. But she continued taking them because of the perceived advantages to hasten her transition, the transformation of her physical characteristics to become more female, more feminine. So despite the side effects, she continued taking them. For the others, 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, etc. Next slide. Okay. You begin to notice the transformation after 4 to 6 months. So breasts develop, your breasts become fuller, your buttocks become rounder, facial hair and body hair diminishes. Next slide. Can we go back to the previous slide? Sorry. So the negative side effects include, previous slide. Yeah, mood swings once a week. Frequency, mood swings once a week, irritability, dramatic decrease in sex drive, etc. Okay, next slide. Okay. Now I have 2 trans men from female to male. So it was unlike compared to the trans women, my trans men resource persons say it's more difficult to access or to source male hormone injectables. Okay, so he started asking his psychiatrist friend for counseling. Kasi actually, he's a psych major. He's a psych major, so he's very knowledgeable about all of this. So he knows that he needs to undergo psychological counseling to prepare him for the transition. So he asked his psychiatrist friend for counseling to prepare him for his transition, but the friend refused. He also has an endocrinologist friend. He asked also assistance from his endocrinologist friend for the hormone therapy. The friend also refused to help him. Okay, next slide. So of course, these are not the real names. Si Butterball at si Adonis, they some of them, mainly they chose these pseudonyms. The source of information is the internet. Okay. So yung isa, yung supplier of male hormone injectables is a gym instructor in Baguio City. Kasi di ba yung the bodybuilders, they take testosterone enhancers or boosters to bulk up their muscles. So he found he finally found a source, which is a gym instructor in Baguio. Si Adonis buys his male hormone injectables from online retail shopping apps, but he's not sure if these are legit items, but he's willing to take the risk. Okay, next slide. Okay, why are there differences in terms of regimen and the side effects? What are the possible reasons for the difference in preferred dosage? As I mentioned, the trans women tend to take overdosage. Is that the term? They don't overdose. They increase the dosage, while the trans men decide to decrease the dosage of the injectables, male hormone injectables. And these are the reasons. For the females, kasi trans women, mega dosing, is that the term? Okay. Anyway, for the trans women, of course, if you take female balik tayo. Okay, if you take okay. So, ang result is that is there something wrong with the slide? Yung previous slide. Okay. So, if you take female hormones, much improved skin quality. So, gaganda ang kutis mo, better complexion. While if you take for the trans men, when they take testosterone, usually their skin breakouts, may acne sa trans men. So, ayaw nila yon. So they would try to limit or decrease the dosage. Next slide. For the trans women, decreased libido. So no sex life, boyfriends are complaining. Versus the trans men, there's a spike in their libido and they're always wanting sex. And this becomes a major source of conflict with their partners. Hindi na daw makakope, that they want to do it all the time, hindi na daw makakope yung girlfriends. So, masama, always in moderation. Okay, next slide. Okay. All of those who are engaging in sex hormone therapy want to undergo gender confirmation surgery. Now, gender confirmation surgery is what we commonly know as sex change operation, sex change surgery. Okay, what are the issues with this? Prohibitive financial costs of the surgery itself, the psychological preparation, so may kailangan kang psych test, counseling, and it's not a one-shot thing. Now, once you get surgery, that's it. May maintenance yan. So, financially and parang ano yan parang yung ganda, pag hindi ka pinanganak na maganda, kailangan kakaririn mo yung pagiging maganda. So, tuloy-tuloy yan na may maintenance dyan, even if you undergo gender confirmation surgery. Since it's not available in the Philippines, there are other costs involved in medical tourism. The nearest country where you can get gender confirmation surgery is Thailand. Of course, famous ang Thailand dyan. Ang question nga namin dyan, Pilipinas kasi, despite having the best cosmetic surgeons and cosmetic reconstructive surgery, hindi tayo naging gender confirmation surgery capital of Asia. And of course, religion has something to do with this. So, nag-benefit ang Thailand doon. Next. Okay, now we go to conclusion and summary. Of course, this non-prescribed sex hormone therapy is done without any supervision of a qualified medical practitioner or clinician. All key informants engage in overdosing or according to megadosing because of the desire to get instant results. There is no way to verify the legitimacy of the manufacturer and the quality of the synthetic hormone products. legit ba yung products na yan? Baka it will result in more harm than good. Next. There are serious health risks in non-prescribed hormone therapy, and you can have deep vein thrombosis. Parang yung sa COVID vaccines, di ba, yung masyadong malapot yung blood, or masyado naman siyang malapot nga yung blood clotting, and then thinning, may issues sa blood clotting and thinning. Okay. Sex hormone therapy should only be initiated after a thorough medical and psychosocial assessment. Hindi yan basta-basta. Especially if the person is very young. Informed consent should be secured after the review of the risks and benefits of undergoing cross-sex hormone therapy. Sex hormones should only be prescribed by authorized medical practitioners in a setup when you have the appropriate medical infrastructure. All of these are being attended to. Next slide. Okay, ano yung recommendations? What are the recommendations? Access to sensitive health service programs and service providers will greatly reduce the health risks. So what we need are sensitive health service programs and service providers. We need to give training to medical practitioners. Transgender individuals need services beyond HIV/AIDS and sexually transmitted infections. There's a need for inclusivity and capacity building in the health infrastructure. And this is not being done. And this is now, probably the situation is worse with our problem with the COVID pandemic. So yung cancer, chemotherapy and the other serious illnesses is now being not being addressed, all the more the issues of the transgenders. Next. Okay, a social medical intervention program should equip medical staff in health facilities with in-depth training on social and medical aspects of transition. We have to be gender sensitive. There's this thing kasi that's called heterosexual assumption. That medical practitioners, those in the medical field, assume that everybody is heterosexual. Or they ridicule those who are exhibiting non-heteronormative gender and sexual identities. Remember there was this canister sa Cebu that they videoed. Apparently there was this gay patient with yung canister of parang yung soft drink, yung soda canister, stuck in his anus, and then they videoed him and made jokes while he was being operated on. Matagal naman na yun. Nagbago naman na. I would like to believe that things have improved. So administration of hormones and preventive care and other activities that support mental health and well-being. Next slide. Health infrastructure should be able to provide for the needs of transgender individuals, including cross-sex hormone therapy and additionally gender confirmation surgery. Next. Okay. There are welcome developments. For example, in Feb this year, I was invited as one of the speakers, resource speakers for the National Academy of Science and Technology. And the topic was on LGBTs during the COVID pandemic. So one of the speakers is a very young doctor from the Medical City, Manila. And they are providing all of these services that I mentioned. Unfortunately, it's a private hospital. And of course, the costs of accessing these services are very prohibitive. So how can majority of the bakla and tomboy access all these services? Okay, next. Okay, there should be holistic, sensitive, appropriate, and accessible intervention programs. We're looking at Canada, US, some states in the US. This is pre-Trump. Pre-Trump. We don't know the situation after Trump. And then there are some countries in Europe that the Philippines can adopt elements from in crafting our own programs. I think this is the last slide. Okay. Salamat po.
Thank you, Prof. JJ. So I'll just stop my sharing. Stop share. Okay. So now the next part of our program will be so clap clap. So cyber clapping for our speakers. Thank you very much. The next part of our program will be the Q&A. So there are a couple of questions now for Professor Magtoto, actually. But yeah, okay, we'll give you a few minutes to kind of gather your thoughts and type down your questions. So again, we would like you to put your questions in our Q&A box. We're also accommodating questions from YouTube. And if you'd like to ask your question in person, then please use the raise hand function and we'll allow you to speak. Okay, in all cases, please try to be concise with the question and direct to the point. Okay, so I'll just check the YouTube kung meron po tayong mga questions. Okay, so I guess we can start with questions in our Q&A box. So Ma'am Lizelle, are you there?
Hi, ma'am.
Yes. And so from John Paul Mendoza, he has two questions. So the first one is curious question. Does the age of the plant or grass affect the translocation of elements? Say as they mature, can TF, I think this is yung translocation factor, tama ba?
Yes po.
Increase or are they more or less the same?
Yes, the accumulation at the same time translocation factor of or the translocation capacity of the plant varies at different life stages. So parang at younger stage, syempre roots are more capable of absorbing. So mas madami, expected na mas madami yung ma-accumulate nila at the same time translocate. But then as it matures, somehow nag-equal because when roots become more mature, nalilesen din yung capacity nila to absorb. So somehow those that has been absorbed by the roots are translocated to the leaves. So parang comparing from other studies, comparing young leaves from young plants with leaves from mature plants, somehow medyo konti lang yung difference ng amount ng heavy metals na meron sila.
Thank you, ma'am. And the second question, okay, so I hope I can read this correctly, is the less than 2 units of copper and less than 10 milligrams per liter of lead in the tailings pond the detection limit of the analysis?
Yes, hindi siya yung detection limit. Actually, detection unit or limit of copper is actually 0.02 milligram per liter and lead is 0.05 milligram per liter. But in the table, we put there the amount of copper that was detected is less than 2 and less than 10 for lead. Yung mga values na yun are actually the lethal concentration specifically for aquatic organisms like crustaceans, fish. So upon reaching this concentrations, it's possible na mamatay na yung mga organisms na to. It's become lethal for them.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, one more. What do you think, so Ma'am Lizelle pa rin po, what do you think are the implications of your research findings to the actions that can or should be taken by the local government unit or the concerned community in managing the decommissioned mine tailings?
Okay. We have this practice kasi that if we want to restore or rehabilitate a barren area, we tend to plant immediately some seedlings of fruit trees or mga, kung hindi, mga ito transfer natin, medyo mature na trees. So it's not feasible since it will take time for the soil to be conditioned by this pioneer species. So kung minsan kasi kapag ka nandun na yung mga grasses, ang nangyayari na is for other locals to clear the grasses and plant immediately some trees. So parang maaring hindi pa ready yung soil by then. So it would be better if we leave it if we leave that area to be conditioned by this pioneer species muna before planting trees. Actually, we've seen TSF1 and ganun din, hinayaan din nila yung area na yon for a period of time, puro grasses lang din until eventually nagtanim sila ng mga bamboos. Medyo mas malalaking konti, but still these are hyperaccumulators, known hyperaccumulators. And then from bamboos, nagdagdag na sila ng mga alnos, and then later on, other fruit trees. So, decades older naman yon kaysa sa TSF2 na na-investigate namin. So, for restoration projects, I would suggest na i-check muna nila yung quality nung substrates, yung mapa-water man siya or soil man siya, if there are already pioneer communities existing. So if there are, then i-sustain lang nila, hindi yung i-convert kaagad nila.
So, tama po ba, Prof. Lizelle, na you're saying it would be better to leave an area alone than to immediately intervene, kumbaga?
Yes, if present na yung mga pioneer communities na yon. Pero kung wala and we want the rehabilitation process to be faster, then it's possible for them to introduce this pioneer species. The pioneer species, not the old trees or the fruit trees, kasi nga hindi sila capable of conditioning the soil. So if they have the intention to revegetate or to bring back the communities, the vegetations and other animals in the area, then it would be best to start with the pioneer species. So identifying this pioneer species from this decommissioned mine tailings would help the local planners to identify which organisms or which plants or which grasses are they going to introduce in such barren areas.
Last na, kasi usually po ma'am, how long does it take to rehabilitate? Of course, this could be a varying figure, ano po, pero I'm just curious, like how long it usually takes to rehabilitate decommissioned facilities like this po?
So, etong facility na to, parang nag-end yung operation niya 1990s. So when we visited the area, ayun, pioneer species pa lang siya. So it will take decades, 30 years, 40 years. Pero so yun nga. So if you want it to be faster, yun. So mas magandang mag-introduce ng mga identified pioneer species that can tolerate yung ganong condition.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. So thank you po. So for Prof. JJ naman po, we have some questions also. So are you there? Naririnig niyo po ba ako?
Yes, pa.
Okay po. So question, did your study include a survey of the medical facilities in Baguio and La Trinidad that can cater to hormone therapy for transgenders?
This is an initial study. This did not include the medical facilities, pero based on literature review, they are not providing it right now. But there are recently, in last year, for example, there are now medical practitioners, endocrinologists who are more open to have engagements with this transitioning transgenders. And then COVID happened. So one of the things I wanted to do was to make a network and connect these transgenders with the appropriate medical practitioners. But then all of a sudden, everything was on hold because of this COVID pandemic.
Are there other questions po? May nakikita ko na nag-raise kanina pero binaba niya agad yung hand. So if you would like, you can raise your question or put it in the Q&A box po. Okay. While we're waiting for that, Ma'am JJ, I have a question naman po. So yung study niyo po, parang gusto ko po ding malaman yung legality ng yung dimension of that dito sa Pilipinas in terms of people. So of course, ideally we should have body agency, di po ba, na parang we should be allowed to do what we want with our bodies. Pero what does the legal setup look like for people who want to transition? Are they allowed by law or somehow hindered by law to do this?
Okay, let me answer that in a very roundabout way. To the best of my knowledge, there are no laws that prevent you from undergoing gender confirmation surgery and taking pills, contraceptive pills or injectables. But the obstacle lies in there are no legitimate and legal ways for you to have all of these things. Parang hindi naman siya abortion, it's illegal. But there are no infrastructure for you to be able to avail of the services. Okay, two, even so, most of these transgenders go abroad to the US, to Thailand, Canada. But when they come back, the laws also put limitations on how they can live out their new gender identity and sexual identity. For example, if somebody goes to Canada or Thailand and comes back to the Philippines, in the eyes of the Philippine law, using Philippine laws, he's still considered, let's say, nag-transition na siya from female to male. He is still considered female, or male to female, he is still considered male. He or she will not be allowed to change her basic papers. There's only one case of an intersex person who was allowed to change the basic information in her papers. Intersex for transgenders to transition, no, that will not be allowed. Even marriages that are considered legal in other countries are not recognized in the Philippines.
So, okay, ma'am. Again, if our attendees have any other questions po, please feel free to give them. Another question I have, Prof. JJ, this might be like a tangent to your study lang. Pero there's this idea of the medicalization of transition, di po ba? I'm wondering lang which is like yung, kumbaga, to be transgender or to transition, you have to undergo these medical procedures or like taking hormones, ganyan. Whereas, for example, some transgender people would think na transitioning or their gender is something that is their own or cannot be, hindi madidiktahan ng ano ba, it's not within the control of medical professionals, parang ganyan. So I'm just curious po what you think of that, and if halimbawa the trans community in Baguio and La Trinidad have other ideas or views on transitioning, or if talagang medical po talaga yung way ng pag-transition for them.
Various degrees rin yan eh. There are transgenders who, sabi ko nga, the umbrella term is transgender. So there are transgenders who are born female ang assigned sex at birth, but identify, for example, as male and would like to establish intimate relations with females, but they do not see the need to transition, for medical intervention to transition. There are those who assigned sex at birth, for example, female, and then identify as male. They really need to undergo, and they desire to undergo the surgery and the hormone therapy and the surgery. And they decide to go do this. Since it's not allowed in the Philippines, they go abroad to go undergo these procedures. In different states and in different countries, the acceptance of your gender identity, for some, they require that you transition 100%. Something like you internal organs and external organs. So if you're a trans man and you want to become a man, so you need to remove your breasts. You need to become more male in terms of presentation, and you need to remove all the internal organs associated with being female. Okay, in some countries and in some states, that's not required. Okay, so degrees yung requirements nila for accepting your gender identity. So degrees siya. So in the Philippines, we have a long way to go. So I as always, I do not, parang if you have the right, sabi nga may bodily agency tayo, we should have that right to decide for ourselves. Not the church, not the government, not the doctors, the medical institution, or other people should decide for these persons, these individuals. So yun yung stand ko. We should have the right to decide for ourselves.
For the infrastructure nga po, to be available, whether or not you would want to use that infrastructure or not. Ganun po.
For those, it should be available. Parang there should be safe and accessible, safe, holistic infrastructure.
So, all right. I think there's a query here. So, ayan po, we'll make the link, the evaluation link. So, meron po tayong evaluation link for this webinar. If you'd like to request for a certificate, we can issue that to you. But please do fill out the evaluation form. We'll make the link accessible to non-UP mail accounts din po. So, please just stand by for that. And then, so, kung may iba pa pong katanungan, so dito po kay Ma'am Lizelle. So, based on your research findings, so Ma'am Lizelle, nandiyan po ba kayo?
Yes po.
Okay po. So, based on your research findings, is it correct to think that the decommissioned mine tailings do not pose any critical danger for the communities where these, communities meaning communities of people, where these tailings are located, or mine tailings facilities are located?
Based on our observation, the positive, if I may say, the positive results we obtained from this study is somehow attributed to the proper treatment that they were doing in the facility. So if we are going to look at the other mine tailings fund that are open, which are not managed, like for example, open pit mining, the one we visited prior to this site, it was not even enclosed. So parang open talaga yung pond, it's flowing to the nearby bodies of water. So that's a time that it will really have this negative effect to nearby communities. Pero for the facility we visited, somehow enclosed kasi yung facility, plus mayroon silang ginagawang treatment, mayroon silang ginagawang process. And it's giving us parang an indication na possible na magkaroon ng gadong succession kabilis sa isa or rehabilitation ng isang area from this disturbed mine tailings sites.
Pwede magsalita?
Thank you, Ma'am Lizelle, and then Ma'am JJ. Sige po.
It's about Lizelle's research. Kasi in the 1990s, kasama ko si dating Chancellor RR when we did studies sa open pit mining communities. Okay, so parang ayaw ko lang yung danger na yung para siyang snapshot na yung maganda yung research ni Lizelle na ito siya. Ito yung pioneering communities. Ito yung mga bagong species na tumutubo dito sa dating mine tailings dam. Pero sana yung ko lang paano gagawin, makita yung context na ito yung komunidad, mayamang komunidad before pumasok ang minas, ito yung benefits, ito naman yung disadvantages, tapos ito yung nangyaring destruction. Tapos sabi nga ni Lizel, it will take a long time before the area gets rehabilitated. Yung para makita natin yung buong picture, yung context na hindi ito na, baka kasi magbigay ng impression at magamit na, nare-rehabilitate naman pala, so walang mali sa mining. Lalo na tinanggal na ni President Duterte
Yung ban.
yung ban on the mining. So, halimbawa, yung sa Marinduque, matinding yung disaster nung mine tailings dam sa Marcopper, na hanggang ngayon ay masakit sa puso ng mga tao ng Marinduque yung nangyari doon, na hanggang ngayon ay wala silang nakuhang reparations despite ng lahat ng tindi ng damages na nagawa ng Marcopper. So, yun lang yung aking komentaryo.
Yes, ma'am. So, yes, before nung I agree with Ma'am JJ then na before yung before yung pioneering, yung occupancy ng mga pioneering communities na yon, may mga dekada tayong di nakikita anong nangyari. So yun yung punto din na possible nga na in those years, possible na hindi, lalo na for open pit mining, talagang harmful siya. So it will take time para rehabilitate siya. So anong mangyari during those decades? Yes, kapag hindi siya manage, kapag open pit mga yan, talagang it will cause problems sa community. Toxic talaga yung mga elements coming from it.
Okay, thank you po. And then we also have, thank you ma'am. Ma'am JJ, Prof. JJ, meron po tayong question from an anonymous attendee. So, how welcoming is the Baguio and La Trinidad community to transgenders, especially taking into account the Cordilleran culture?
Mahirap mag-generalize. I would say at Baguio and La Trinidad, especially Baguio, more welcoming than other areas in the Cordillera. I don't know if they are as welcoming as some areas in mountain province like Bontoc and Sagada and Tadian. Pero probably because of modernity, probably because it's a melting pot. Nandyan yung people from different geographic areas come to Baguio for commerce, for trade, for education, and mingling with migrants, with migrant populations. We have become more tolerant, respectful for diversity, because that's what we need to be able to survive. Hindi pwedeng kung ano yung dala-dala nating ugali natin, kung saan man tayo nanggaling, ay yun lang ang pwede. So there's more room for diversity. As always, my professors in history and anthropology would say, don't ever generalize. So depende. Ayokong i-compare sa ibang areas in the Cordillera or to make a statement about Cordillera culture. Baka mabato ako at ma-crucify, di ba, Dr. Tindaan? Pero from my experiences, from my more than 20 years of staying in Baguio, more than 20 years, probably 30 years in Baguio City, ano talaga, very welcoming kasi in Baguio kasi nga, di ba, maglakad ka lang sa Session Road, magbilang ka ng LGBTs, ng mga bakla, tomboy, gay, lesbians, mapapagod ka magbilang. Umuposisyon ka sa Upper Session Road sa panahon ng labasan after 5. Siguraduhin ko sa'yo, pre-pandemic mapapagod kang magbilang kasi napakarami. And it's okay to express public display of affection in Baguio City.
Okay po. Ayan, meron pa po ba tayong mga questions or comments na gustong i-raise? That's done. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you din po for attending our webinar for this morning. We're almost to the end. Okay, I'll give you one more minute for questions. Thank you so much to our speakers for sharing your research with us today. It was very engaging from two different disciplines. Talagang medyo coast to coast na disciplines yung ating pinakinggan ngayong umaga. Pero sa tingin ko po ay naging napaka-rich nung discussion natin. Again, like Professor Tindaan, Director Tindaan said in the opening remarks, these are results of CSC-funded research grants provided to our faculty. So please look forward to more research, more lectures, more events like this featuring the completed research ng ating mga faculty dito sa UP Baguio. And if your proposals for funding sa CSC, ayan po. So lastly, I would like to kind of announce or parang ano ba, tease we are also, the Cordillera Study Center also publishes the Cordillera Review, which is a journal of Philippine culture and society. So i-flash ko lang para makita ninyo, we will be launching the website for the Cordillera Review soon. In the next few weeks. So please look forward to this. Using this website, you can download, it's open access. You will be able to download the articles published in the Cordillera Review. So we do hope na you will be there for the launching, and yun lang man po. Ayan. So maraming salamat po muli. Ma'am Ruth, do you want to say anything else before we end?
Okay, so I'd like to thank Prof. JJ, Prof. Lizelle, for your time, for sharing your research, and like Pao said, in the future we'll have more lectures from our completed researches. So please look forward to this lecture series, and of course the launching of the TCR in the next few weeks. So thank you for all our participants. Maraming salamat at dito kayo nag-attend sa webinar. Kahit may ibang webinar na ongoing din. Okay, so maraming salamat po. We'll Doc JJ and Prof. Lizelle will send your e-certificate of appreciation to your email. So thank you very much for taking the time to prepare your presentations and sharing them with us this morning. So thank you on behalf of the Cordillera Study Center, and see you again in future lectures. Maraming salamat po.
Thanks, Pao.
Thank you po.
Ayan, please fill out the evaluation form. Nasa chat box po muna. Hintayin kong makaalis po muna kayo. Maybe we can, Sir Kim, go off the air sa YouTube. Pero I'll wait for the rest of the attendees to leave before going para may access sila sa link, sa evaluation link. Ayan po. So please.
Yeah.